One or two exegetical remarks about this gospel reading, which comes from the 10th chapter of the book of John. It's one good example, and there are many in John's gospel, about what we call high Christology, the high Christology of John's gospel. High Christology meaning there is a particular emphasis on the divinity of Jesus, especially in the Gospel of John. In the synoptics, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, not as much, but in John's Gospel, the Johannine Jesus is very powerful. There is no infancy narrative in the Gospel. That would be too human. When Jesus gets to Gethsemane, he doesn't go through the great agony in the Gospel of John. That wouldn't fit high Christology. And when the soldiers come to arrest him in the Gospel of John, he says, "Whom do you seek?" And they say, "Jesus the Nazarene." He says, "I am he." And then only John tells us they fell down before him. And we come to the text of today's gospel here, the last few lines. "No one takes my life from me. I lay it down, and I take it up again." So John always portrays Jesus as very powerful. He's in control. The divinity of Jesus is a very strong emphasis in the text of John's gospel. This narrative about the Good Shepherd is found only in John. The other gospels have references to shepherds, but the Good Shepherd is only Johannine. And it is because it got high Christology in it. It's the power of the Good Shepherd. There are other shepherds who in a time of crisis run away. But the Good Shepherd is faithful, and the Good Shepherd lays down his life for his sheep. It's a very powerful image that comes here to reveal to us the pervasive and infinite love of God in the Good Shepherd. In the time of crisis, the Good Shepherd stays, the hired hand leaves. So I want to look at that with you so that we somehow connect with this Jesus of John's Gospel, and then we wonder what it means to us in our own lives. When Jesus says he lays down his life for his sheep, he lays down his life on many occasions before he gets to Calvary. He was dying when they denied him, when he was betrayed. This is a dying experience. When he was lonely in the Garden of Gethsemane, when he prayed that the cup of suffering would pass him by, he was going through a dying experience. Loneliness is a dying experience. Being misjudged, people around who are ungrateful somehow seems to diminish us. So you have many, many moments of dying. Ingratitude is an experience of dying. So we'll look at the sequence of the salvation story of this Messiah, and you will see many occasions on which he is dying. He goes through these dying experiences, and ultimately he will get to Calvary. And these are all the preamble to the great resurrection of Jesus. One of the most powerful images that appears in this sequence, and we had it last week in the 24th chapter of the Gospel of Luke, is that after Jesus has died, he comes back to his disciples. He does not leave them. He makes the first move to be reconciled. He doesn't come back to judge. He does not come back to dismiss them. He does not come back for recrimination or to get equal or to remind them of their sins. He comes back to heal, to forgive, to encourage them, to renew them in their discipleship with him, to understand the unfolding of divine providence in their lives, which must include dying. It must include suffering. He comes back to teach them about the meaning of life. He makes the first move. What does this mean to us? It means that in order to grasp and embrace the meaning of life, we will go through many dying experiences. We will go through experiences of being rejected, being misunderstood, being the subject of false judgment. We'll go through ingratitude, where we sacrifice and nobody seems to notice. It doesn't come back to me. Is there one among us who has not experienced the fact that you gave a big gift and nothing came back, or very little came back? Is there a marriage where people say it's going to be 50-50, but it's never 50-50? You know, the man, after many years of marriage, was asked, what's the secret of a long marriage? And he said, we go out to dinner 6 nights a week. Well, yeah, she goes out Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and said, I go out Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. But this thing of being equal in life, nothing is equal in life. We go through these human experiences of dying. That's very important when we come to understand how the Christ person is to appear in our lives. We will go through praying in fear in the Garden of Gethsemane, wherever we find ourselves, that the cup of suffering may pass us by. We will go through all these experiences that appear in Jesus Christ. And the teaching of the Good Shepherd is he chooses to lay down his life and not demand from those for whom he sacrifices. The prayer is to have a mellow heart, to be kind, to have a soft heart. Last year when I had my 50th, they've got all these questionnaires, what's your favorite thing and what do you do and all that. They said, what's the favorite quality, the quality you most like in another person? I said, a soft heart. That's the greatest gift anybody can give you, is a soft heart that forgives, a heart that's kind, overlooks your human weakness, a heart that forgives you and doesn't demand, a heart that understands, a heart which is human, so that you can relate to the humanity of another. The mellow heart, and that's what appears in Jesus Christ here. When I was reflecting on this, I was reminded of the Zen Buddhist story. Very familiar to us, about the 2 Buddhist monks who are on their way from one monastery to the other. And they're in silent prayer because that's their discipline. And as they journey along, they come upon this beautiful young woman standing at the side of the road, and there's a huge puddle in the road from the monsoon rains. And Aikido goes and he, without saying anything, lifts this young woman and carries her across through the puddle on the road. And they keep going and say nothing. And when they get to the monastery, Tenzin said, my God, Aikido. Now they're allowed to talk. How could you break your prayer and touch that woman? It's against all our mandates on the road. And he said, Aikido, I left her back in the road. How come you still got her with you? This is true. This is the absence of the soft heart, the mellow heart. To be gracious, to forgive. Because life will wound us. That's the story of life. It's all part of the economy of life. To go through these difficult times and how to find a spirituality. The spirituality of the Good Shepherd. To be faithful. To come back, to make the first move. Who's going to make the first move? Where you have a conflict in your life. The Good Shepherd made the first move, but not to get even, or not to remind the person of the sin, but to heal, to forgive, to encourage, to understand, to be patient. Who makes the first move? In the image of the Good Shepherd, in the image of Jesus Christ risen from the dead, who comes back to give life. That's the call of discipleship. Now, C.S. Lewis, in his, maybe the greatest apologist of the last, in the Christian tradition, the greatest apologist of the last 100 years, 1958, he wrote this book, The Four Loves. It was considered a little scandalous at the time, but now it wouldn't be scandalous because it had some overtones about love. It's about the four Greek words for love. See, I don't understand exactly how to interpret love in our present culture. I love my wife, I love my country, I love my dog, I love my car, I love, Oh, I know what it means. But if you go to Greek, you'll find out what it means. I love you, but I'm not in love with you. Oh, okay. I love you, but if you don't go away, how can I miss you? What does this love? I love you, but I don't want to be around you all the time. What does love mean? When you get to the Greek, there are four words in Greek, and that's the four loves that C.S. Lewis deals with. But he reminds us in the book that the economy of life will include suffering. The Good Shepherd will have to suffer. He will have to lay down his life. That's the only measure of goodness. The other one runs away in a time of crisis. This one stays. The faithful Good Shepherd. C.S. Lewis writes this in his Four Loves. I mentioned last week, Plato, we're fired into life with this energy inside of us that makes us believe we're destined for a great love, and we are all destined for a great love. C.S. Lewis says, to love is to be vulnerable. If you want to make sure of keeping your heart intact, you must give your heart to no one, not even to an animal. Wrap it around carefully with hobbies and little luxuries. Avoid all entanglements. Lock it up safe in the casket of your selfishness. And in that casket, safe, dark, motionless, airless, it will change. It will not be broken. It will become unbreakable, impenetrable, irredeemable. The only place outside of heaven where you can be perfectly safe from the dangers of love is hell. Pray today for a soft heart. Pray today for a mellow heart. Pray today for a heart in the likeness of Jesus, the Good Shepherd. Amen.